Hello, everyone. Welcome to another streaming for Latina professionals, really focusing on confident public speaking. Welcome, whether this is your first time joining me for this session, your fifth, sixth, seventh time joining me for this session as well. Really excited to welcome you to this presentation on amplifying your message, the art of vocal projection. And so as we're here, as we like to do, while you're joining in, please, let's see, here we are. Welcome, Latina professionals. Feel free to connect, drop a question, or say hello. Let us know where you're joining from, the industry that you're in, and what you're looking to learn today. I want to give a shout out, make sure you write it here, to Camila Lagos, who has invited many folks within the translation and interpretation industry to attend this session. And you can imagine, in a role that requires a good amount of public speaking and speaking on behalf and empowering different communities, amplifying one's voice, whether it is the volume, the enunciation, even the pacing as well, can really help us not only advocate for ourselves, but advocate for other folks as well. So again, let me know where you're joining from, the industry that you're currently in, and what you're looking to learn today, because I see so many different people attending different sessions. I've hosted sessions on effective body language, I will soon be hosting a session on mastering Q&As, talking about faking it till you make it. So sense of some of those confidence topics as well. But something brought you here today regarding the art of vocal projection. And I'd love to hear what that is for you. All right, saying hi from Margaret from Florida, Nayeli as well, Virginia from Venezuela. Yvette is an executive coach, fantastic. So seeing a lot of folks coming in the comments, and you never know, who are some of these folks that you want to connect with, who can be a part of your network, help you land that next job, help you hire the next amazing person for your organization, who can be a lifelong friend or mentor to you as well. And don't hesitate to connect with me too. Feel free to pop onto my LinkedIn profile, hit the connect button, send me a quick message as well, because I would love to be a support to you with the things that I share and the presentations that I host as well. So welcome. Seeing a lot of folks coming in today. Continue letting us know where you're joining from, what drew you to this topic as well. Awesome. Seeing some folks coming back session after session on Mondays, which is fantastic. And we have a lot of really great Latina professional sessions as well on career topics, on Latina mental health. So don't hesitate to check out the Latina professionals page and check in and RSVP for different events. We're glad to see you here. We have folks who are job seeking in payroll, recruiting, executive assistantship, healthcare communications. Wonderful. All right. Well, the goal for this session is to really focus on what are some of the first steps that you can use to build some of that vocal projection and make sure that your message hits all different corners of the room, whether it's a huge auditorium or this Zoom screen. Additionally, we'll focus a bit on different techniques for vocal power and how you can engage your audience with the ways that you're speaking as well. Okay. And hello, I want to introduce myself again, whether you've heard this introduction multiple times or this is the first time you're here. I always love to make sure y'all have a sense of why do I talk about these topics. And so not only am I a confidence and public speaking coach who helps executive level leaders build long-term confidence through committed speaking practice, expert feedback, and accountability, but I'm really drawn to speaking, which is not only to hear my voice, but it's really to get a sense of how are the things that I'm talking about in the most effective, concise, and impactful way able to help folks like you in this audience learn a lot of information in a really jam-packed way without a big sense of cognitive overload. Cognitive overload is the sense of, oh my gosh, so much information coming to me, going through my ears and either out through the other, or jumbling up in the head and feeling like, oh my gosh, like I left the session Sammy hosted even more confused than I did when I started. And that is not the goal whatsoever. I hope that in some ways I can show as a role model some of the things I talk about regarding vocal projection, vocal power, warm-ups, as well as confident speaking. And I'm not a perfect speaker either. Sometimes I catch myself stumbling. Sometimes I catch certain filler words. What I realize is important isn't the perfection when speaking. It's a sense of learning and growing and developing as we go. And that's a journey I join all of y'all on as well. It's so wonderful seeing so many more folks introduce themselves in the chat. If you haven't yet already, definitely let us know where you're coming from, where you're based. So for example, I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, though I am from McAllen, Texas. What industry you're in. So I'm both higher education, professional training, and consulting, and why you're here. And I'm here because I'm teaching this. And if you're here because you'd love to listen, or this has been a topic that's been really racking your brain for a long time, I'd love to hear it. All right. Well, I'd love to learn from y'all in the chat if you've ever gotten the feedback from other folks that you're soft-spoken, that you are quiet, that it's hard to hear you, or even that people ask you to repeat what you're saying because they didn't catch it the first time. Let me know. You can do a raise hand emoji if you want to. You can say yes. And you can even share experiences that you've had with that type of feedback. Now, I'll also say, if you're someone who's never gotten that feedback, that sense of, no, people think I'm really loud. People think I am very assertive, too aggressive. Which assertive is definitely a lot more of a positive connotation than that sense of being aggressive, which can honestly be unprofessional feedback to get in the workplace. So let me know, have you heard other people give you feedback about being soft-spoken? Or do you feel like maybe I am speaking a bit loud, but I've never gotten that feedback before? And again, if you're not as comfortable posting that in the comments, that's okay too. I'd love to hear from your own perspective. And if you haven't yet, again, connected with me on LinkedIn, definitely do so. We can have some conversations after this workshop. Oh my gosh, so many people here. I love it. Okay. Now, one thing I'll also say for those who feel that, hey, I'm too shy to speak up, I'm too introverted to speak up, I don't feel like I belong in the place where I'm at. One thing that I've learned and is really encapsulated well in this quote is don't let your current situation dictate your future. If you feel like you've not been a strong public speaker, if you feel like you're not a confident person, it's important to never let the fear and doubt overcome your true dreams. And just because maybe that's the place that you're in currently, that's the goal of coaching. Whether it's basketball coaching, whether it's tennis coaching, whether it's even fashion style coaching or public speaking and confidence coaching. It's all about the developmental path, where I was when I started to where I am now, since I dedicated time, energy into building my speaking skills. So seeing from folks here, we see Heidi Margarita's never received some feedback on being soft-spoken. Heidi is mentioned being considered assertive. Pamela has done feedback for 4 years with my team, which is fantastic because oftentimes one thing I've heard from many clients I've worked with is that when it comes to public speaking, they haven't really gotten feedback about their public speaking. They have a sense that they could improve, but they're not exactly sure in what areas or which ways that they can improve that would impact their company, their role, their business in a positive way as well. Okay. And yeah, seeing a lot of folks from the translation and language industry. Welcome, Virginia. All right. But yes, don't let your current situation dictate your future. Never let fear and doubt overcome your true dreams. And if your dreams include, hey, I'm hitting a ceiling because I've not yet built up my public speaking skills, let's just inch closer and closer toward where your true dreams lie. Now, vocal warm-ups. If you joined my session last week, it was about effective body language. And I had many folks stretch their hands out to the front, stretch their arms above, stretch to the side, move around, and recognize that you're not confined to the Zoom box, is what I like to call it. When you're in a physical room, you're not also limited to being behind a podium, for example. And so these types of warm-ups physically can be really helpful for feeling more confident and comfortable with body language and effective gestures. The same thing with your voice. It's very key to warm up. I'm not sure if you've been to a choir concert, if you've been to many concerts where you were able to see folks getting set up, doing the mic test 1, 2, 3. And the tests aren't just for the technology. They're really for folks to be able to warm up their voice, which is a tool in itself, for speaking as well. As much as it is important to make sure your technology is right, you're using the right webcam, you have your trusty microphone set up, you've tested your Wi-Fi 3 to 5 times before an interview, it's really important to also warm up your voice as well. Now, some tips that I've learned from someone who has been in multiple choirs throughout her life is before you have a speaking engagement, it's not a bad idea to drink some warm water, some warm tea. I would caution against coffee if it's something where you include milk or something creamy, because any type of cream will then coat your throat, which makes it harder to enunciate and makes it harder to have some of that vocal power as well. Let me know if you have some experience with singing and any tips that you've known from that experience regarding vocal warm-ups as well. Now, with warm-ups too, one thing that I encourage clients to do, one thing I do when I'm practicing before a speaking engagement like this, is I will use YouTube and I'll look up a vocal warm-up video. I'll look up for something that is meant for singers, and I'll also look up something, maybe 2 to 5 minutes long that works for folks who are just warming up their voice for the day. Definitely let me know if you're looking for any recommendations for those. I've gotten a couple myself, and so I'd love to share them with you. Feel free to message me, connect with me on LinkedIn, as I've said before. Let's see. Now, we're also seeing some more folks talk about their experience with being soft-spoken, regarding vocal projection. We see Maribel. I've received mixed feedback. First, I was shy and quiet, and when I amassed my true potential, I was too aggressive and pushy. Well, one thing I'll see, Maribel, is these are just folks' perceptions. And for some other folks, they may see that your vocal projection, your volume is perfect for what you're doing as well. But there's always room where we can see what our range is. What is it like when I speak really soft? What is it like when I take up the entire space and I'm speaking like I'm in a full auditorium with 300 people? That's something that we can build up, is that sense of how do we speak regarding different contexts. Okay. Now, one tool that actors, singers, and folks, for example, who actually are learning English use alike are tongue twisters. It's a really great way to open the jaw, to get the tongue moving, to even get the blood flowing in your brain with how wild some of these tongue twisters are. And I've actually used tongue twisters before to practice specific skills when it comes to projecting my voice and when it comes to really amplifying what I'm trying to say. And the thing is, we can amplify what we're saying more than just volume. And I'd love to show one of my favorite tongue twisters. And this tongue twister I read about recently from Carrie Fisher. So you may know who Carrie Fisher is immediately via her name. Carrie Fisher is most famously known for her role in Star Wars as Princess Leia. And when she studied acting in London, they used this tongue twister quite a bit, to the point where she completely memorized it, always used it before she acted, before she spoke in public. And so I would like to practice it with you. Now, I know last time we talked about body gestures. I talked about if you're in a room full of people, you don't feel as confident and comfortable practicing in the moment, you're using headphones to listen. Perhaps you don't practice out loud right now, but you can use the recording and practice along. Now, if you're completely alone, it's just you and your cat, or you in your space, and you feel confident and comfortable to practice along with me, do so. But here's the tongue twister, and I'll start it out with y'all. All I want is a proper cup of coffee, made in a proper copper coffee pot. You can believe it or not, but I want a cup of coffee from a proper copper pot. Tin coffee pots or iron coffee pots, they're not good for me. If I can't have a proper cup of coffee from a proper copper coffee pot, I'll just have tea. All I want is a proper cup of coffee, made in a proper copper coffee pot. You can believe it or not, but I want a cup of coffee from a proper copper pot. Feel free to do it on your own, feel free to pause this video if you're watching the recording to practice it on your own. And as you can tell, I did not nail it 100%. I do feel like I did a great job. I'll give myself that, but I know I definitely didn't nail it. This is a really helpful exercise just to, again, get the mouth moving, get the blood flowing, practice with some of those types of consonants that can be tricky at times. And I see Pamela laughing. It is hilarious. This is a great tongue twister. And so maybe you have your own favorite as well. Let's see. Connie is sharing some really great advice regarding choir warm-ups. So our director used to help us enunciating every syllable of a song slowly in a talk sing chant. Helps enunciate in speaking and dialogue too. That is perfect, Connie, because that's what I wanted to show right now. So we don't have to do it as fast as possible. But, for example, here are the first two lines of this tongue twister in a very slow, enunciated way. All I want is a proper cup of coffee made in a proper copper coffee pot. You can imagine with that enunciation practice that it becomes a lot easier to not feel too twisted in the consonants, the C and the P. And you can imagine, starting with a slower enunciated practice, that if you continued that practice going on, that you'd be able to do it very quickly. I know many of the people here watching are mothers, have children, or you have children in your life, folks in your life that you'd like to practice this with. Make it a family game, or make it a game with friends as well. So perhaps you challenge some of your friends, your kids, your nieces, nephews, cousins, for example, to practice this out and see who can do it the fastest, who can do it the best as well. And that's a great way to connect with other people as well as practice this specific type of speaking skill. So that's the first suggestion here. Thank you, Connie, for sharing that. Definitely choir directors are really great at focusing on that enunciation, because if we are not, for example, enunciating the T at the end of a word in a song, it can easily go away and be very jumbled for the audience. For a lot of people with choir experience, you know that the enunciation sounds really weird if you're doing it on your own, but flows very naturally in song. Let's see. Ixta says, someone told me to enunciate correctly, you must show your teeth. And perfect emoji for that as well. Well, I know a lot of y'all, I don't see your screens on here. So if you want to practice and show your teeth specifically, knowing that, hey, it's just me, I'm working on this, try it out. We want to try this out multiple times, even though it might feel silly or uncomfortable, because it is that first step to getting used to amplifying that part of your message, the direct words that you're saying. Now, the other exercise that I recommend for this tongue twister here is rating your voice. And when I say rating, I don't mean from worst to best, but really getting a sense of your volume and what your bass volume is. There are some folks I've worked with who, after we talked about it, they say, I think my bass volume is a 3, and I'd love to get it to a 6. For me, in the past, depending on the place where I was at, it would definitely be a 9 in a large auditorium, knowing that my voice was going to go to all different corners. But in a small meeting with 4 to 5 folks, it could be at about a 5 or so. So 5 would be kind of that average or so. So let me know in the chat, when you think about your bass speaking volume, whether you are talking to friends, you're at work, you're giving a presentation, 1 being the quietest and 10 being the loudest, where would you rank your bass volume? So definitely just drop that number in the chat here. Let's see. Norma is talking about taking Toastmasters classes. That's something I've done for a bit, and actually my own public speaking trainer was trained through Toastmasters as well. So definitely a great recommendation for getting started, especially if you're looking for more of that group focus. We see Connie over here talking about the great movies, The King's Speech, good exercises based on a true story. So thank you all for showing and sharing what's been effective for you or what's been helpful for you as well. So as you're dropping what your base volume is, one thing that you can do to use this tongue twister practice about the proper cup of coffee is saying, you know what? I feel like for example, Pamela talked about it being a 6. Maybe Pamela practices at a 9 just to see what that's like. What would a 9 be? What would pushing the boundary be? Now, for someone like Nayeli who says, I'm at about an 8 or a 9, what would it be like if your voice was at a 3? Because ironically, one of the best ways to amplify our message at times is strategic silence and strategic quiet. You might be slightly more hooked about what I'm saying next because of the strong silence there. But imagine someone who's speaking fully at an 8 or a 9, giving a TED Talk, giving a presentation, getting to the heart and soul of their message and sharing it in this volume. It can often be a way that it resonates with us quite a bit. Perhaps resonates with the emotion of the speaker, resonates with the somberness of what's being said as well. And so I'm seeing a lot of folks highlight 7, 6, 7, 6, 8, 3 or 4 at work, 6 or 7 with friends. The idea with a practice like this, thinking about, okay, what about is the loudness of my speaking, is so that you can build a range. So you know what you sound like when you're at a 2 versus you're at an 8 or a 9. And so that you can employ that depending on the context. Because you're going to need an 8, a 9, possibly a 10 in a really large in-person space. Hopefully they give you a microphone. It's a lot more of an accessible practice. I know there are some people who say, oh, my voice is loud enough, I don't need the microphone. For accessibility purposes, for folks who are hard of hearing, it's very helpful to use the microphone no matter what. Hopefully there's not any technological issues. And so there's no feedback issues with the microphone as well. But if you know you're addressing a larger crowd, you know that, hey, I don't have as much of the vocal support there. Knowing that you can do the 8 or the 9, that you can push your voice in that way can be really helpful. Now, of course, not strain your voice. You don't want to yell. You don't want to scream to the point where it's uncomfortable for you. But whether you're using this tongue twister, so all I want is a proper cup of coffee made in a proper copper coffee pot, or you can use a book of yours, whether it is a favorite book or one that's been on your shelf or your nightstand for a while. And practice, again, the first thing we talked about is the enunciation practice. All I want is a proper cup of coffee made in a proper copper coffee pot, or the range. So maybe a 2 for me is all I want is a proper cup of coffee made in a proper copper coffee pot, or an 8. All I want is a proper cup of coffee. Recognizing that range can be very helpful because for a lot of people, they speak a bit softer than they think they do. And so it's very helpful to practice that. And perhaps if you have a strong, positive relationship with your supervisor or any colleagues that you work with after public speaking, that's something that you can ask is, do you recommend I amplify my voice? Do you recommend that I project more? Is that something that would help regarding getting my message across? Okay, thank y'all so much for sharing the numbers, the base for your speaking as well. And you may feel silly. Maybe you've practiced this along with me, or maybe you're thinking, I'll wait for the recording. Let me practice this on my own. But I love being able to share tangible exercises, tangible strategies, and not just talk about the issues and problems regarding enunciation, vocal projection, but leave you with specific tools that you can use to improve even starting today. So I want to ask y'all, what would you say if you feel like you're not speaking up, if you feel like you're shy, your voice isn't as loud as that you want it to be, you're not saying the things that you want to say in work meetings, you're not leading presentations, perhaps you've even gotten invitations to speak in the past and you declined them because you were afraid of judgment or afraid of or the fear of public speaking. I want you to tell me, what's something that you would say? What is something that you would say if you felt more and more comfortable with amplifying your voice and with sharing your message and your power, not only in your voice, but in your message as well? I'd love to hear it, because one thing I feel that we've fostered in this Latina professionals space, whether it's my sessions on confident public speaking or Norma sessions on Latina mental health or Danny's sessions regarding career and promotion, it's very helpful to share the things that we recognize we want to grow in with our community. Now, again, this is also a public forum. If you feel like, I don't want to share this in the comment right now, feel free to share it with me afterward. Again, send me that message, send me that connection request. I'd love to hear what's something that you would share if you had more of that confidence and you felt like you were projecting your voice in the way that you wanted to. So hopefully we see some more comments rolling in, and that inspiration not only coming from this community, but perhaps really building in the relationships that you build after this presentation. After the community built in this presentation, what's the community that you take with you? Excellent. Now, I'll add one more thing regarding speaking practice, because I just don't want to lose it on this one. One thing that can be really helpful for your speaking practice too, if you practice with this tongue twister, you practice with the book, is recording yourself. Because fear of public speaking can be a bunch of different things. Sometimes it can be fear of being on camera. So practicing recording yourself can help you address that fear, practice amplifying your voice, and sharing that message as well. I want to leave space open at the end of this presentation, as I always do, for any Q&A, for any questions y'all have about this topic, or even about public speaking. If you have any topics that I haven't yet addressed, or maybe I have addressed and you just haven't checked them out yet, let me know in the comments what you'd like to hear, what types of presentations you'd like to see moving forward. I know we're ending the month of June and we're moving into July. And so July's first topic for confident public speaking or executive public speaking is mastering Q&A sessions, handling audience interactions with grace. You can imagine using the enunciation and the vocal power exercises can make that a lot easier. But what I find people struggling with regarding mastering Q&A sessions is I prepared over and over and over again for my presentation. I know exactly what I'm saying. I memorized my 30-minute presentation. But as soon as I get to the Q&A and I have no idea, there's this uncertainty about what people are going to ask me, then I fold. Then I feel nervous. I defer questions to another person on my team. I feel like I'm not speaking as confidently as I did when I was giving the presentation. And so if this is something that you've experienced or you know other people struggle with, feel free to RSVP and attend and share it with as many folks who could benefit as possible. I'd love to see you come back week and week again to learn different strategies and feel a lot more confident in yourself as a speaker. If you feel like, hey, I'm interested in figuring out how I can feel confident when speaking and not feel overwhelmed with racing thoughts, if you're 100% ready to move to your next step as a high-level leader, definitely connect with me. We can speak soon regarding working together. And additionally, if you feel like this can be helpful for your organization. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of folks from the translation and interpretation field as well. And you recognize, hey, we need someone to come in and speak about this to our organization. Feel free to contact me as well. And I'd love to do that. Okay, we do have a question here from Imelda. Any tips on to avoid repeating pauses with or any filler word? I'm sure it's practice, but that's the one thing I would like to improve. Okay, Imelda, that's a really great thing that you've noticed and that you have an awareness of. Because, for example, a lot of people aren't aware at all if they have filler words, or they have filler words every 2 to 3 words or something like that. But what you've noticed is that your pauses are where you have more of the ums and uhs. So what can be helpful for you, Imelda, especially if you do a recorded practice, is speaking a bit slower and pointing out every time you have an or in that pause. It helps you build more and more of that awareness. But what you want to do is lengthen your pauses for a bit and have more silence and just get used to the silence. Because usually the filler words are coming in the pauses because we feel uncomfortable with that silence. So if you stretch out that silence when you speak, you get more used to it. You can bring them back to a more comfortable level of pause without having those filler words. I know for a lot of people, especially a lot of women and non-binary folks, sometimes we fill that silence with an or because we're used to being interrupted. That really depends on the environment you're in, the context you're in, but sometimes it can come from that as well. And so as we build out our pauses, that can help people get used to what your speaking style is so that you're less likely to be interrupted as well. So I hope that's really helpful as well. Deanna saying for a future topic, I would like to learn about intonation, especially when sharing a story prior to a presentation. So I would love to share more about storytelling, intonation, any of those topics as well. I thank you all for attending this Latina Professionals community presentation. Definitely connect with my sessions on Mondays at noon Eastern. And if you'd like to connect with me afterward, you can definitely do so at speakyall.com, Sammy@speakyall.com, and definitely really consider joining the Latina Professionals community and membership. It's a way where you'll get not only these types of professional development sessions, but really build out even more professional development, more leadership topics, and build out more of that concerted community as well. Thank you so much. I look forward to answering your questions, and I'll check in with y'all next week. Alrighty, take care.